The transition from adolescence into adulthood is rarely an easy one. There is no distinct line that separates the child from the adult. Some may even feel as though they are trapped in this nebulous zone for years. I was certainly no exception. As the younger of two siblings in my family, I was always aware of a maturity gap between myself and my sister, who was 3 years my senior. When her friends came over, it was as if that age gap was unbridgeable, especially as I got into my early preteens. I so desperately wanted to be perceived as an adult by others, and yet I still found so much joy in those things that were staples of my childhood. You see, growing up is about learning how to balance the child within you and the adult that you must inevitably become. But figuring out that balance is a daunting and often confusing task. What I speak of has often been portrayed in cinema. The quintessential coming-of-age story has been replicated many times and from many perspectives. From Rushmore to All About Lily Choo Choo, there is no one correct way to depict this tale that is, in many ways, as old as time. And yet, many were surprised when, in 1995, Gainax released their flashy new mecha anime to find that, while it included exceptional action sequences and the seemingly obligatory overly sexualized high schoolers, that the show took a very serious tone in regards to the emotional and physical struggles of a boy experiencing the transition between adolescence and adulthood. Anyways, welcome to Murphy's House. Sit back, get comfortable, and enjoy, because this is what Evangelion meant to me.
I guess you wonder where I've been. I searched to find the love within.
Right off the bat, I think it's important I make something clear. This is not an attempt to explain the incredibly rich lore of Evangelion or to synopsize the hotly debated philosophy of the show, which has been done many times by far more talented individuals. Rather, this will simply be an attempt to convey what Evangelion meant to me, an unemployed and overeducated 20-something-year-old who fell in love with the series in his youth and only recently returned to find that what he remembered as a cool 90s robot anime was in fact the single most devastating piece of media ever conceived by Hideko Anno. I watched the original 26-episode run of Neon Genesis Evangelion when I was around 14. At the time, I was in grade 9 at a school that I hated. I had a decent group of friends, and it's not like I was severely bullied or faced any significant difficulties in life, at least not comparatively. But I would not describe myself as a particularly happy individual. Looking back, I now know that for much of my early teens, I was likely depressed and often found myself ill-equipped to grapple with the complexity of emotions that I was feeling. With this as the backdrop, enter Neon Genesis Evangelion. Immediately, I was captivated by 14-year-old Shinji Ikari's struggle to do what he feels is right while also fighting against his own emotions. The giant robots and cute anime girls certainly helped in terms of the show's initial appeal. However, when I finished the series and the accompanying end of Evangelion film, a strange feeling came over me. Unlike Shinji, I had no grand revelation about my place in this world or why life is worth living. Instead, a dull sense of regret came over me. In fact, I think it's fair to say that I was disturbed by Evangelion on my first watch through, a response that was perhaps familiar to some of you watching. I was angry and confused. There was so much I didn't understand, so much that I couldn't yet understand, just like adolescence itself. It was 10 years later when I finally sat down to rewatch Evangelion. I finished it within a week, and then I immediately restarted it, watching it from beginning to end once more. 3 times I rewatched it as winter gradually became spring. Not because I felt like I'd missed anything or that I was trying to grasp something I was struggling to understand, but because I did understand. Finally, I understood. What I had missed when I was 14 watching the series suddenly hit me like a freight train a full 10 years later. It was only after having entered, endured, and emerged from adolescence into adulthood that I think Evangelion finally started to mean something for me. I had to grow up and look back on myself as a 14-year-old boy to finally be able to identify with Shinji and his emotional struggles. I remember when I originally watched the series, I found Shinji annoying at times, even whiny. It was such a different portrayal of adolescence than I was used to in the media I consumed at the time. Shinji was scared, self-doubting, weak, even loathsome at times. He describes himself at one point as nothing but a coward and a sneak, and constantly shows that he is incapable of accepting the love offered to him by others. A far cry from the hyper-capable and masculine characters I had gotten used to in video games and other shows. Looking back, I think I didn't want to identify with Shinji. It was all just a little too close to home at the time. I didn't have the experience yet to understand what it was to be a child in an adult world, desperate to be perceived as mature, but lacking the experience needed to navigate a mature world, to take actions that we think, that we hope will make us into adults, but in reality only draw even more attention to our immaturity. I now see so much of myself in Shinji, not so much my current self, but rather that angry and confused 14-year-old boy who watched the series 10 years ago. Sometimes I think about what I would say to him if we were to ever meet. That it's okay to be confused, angry, scared. After all, adolescence is a time for discovery, to learn who you are and where you fit in this world. It's even alright to hate yourself at times, especially in a world that demands we love ourselves but can seemingly show us no love in return, just as long as you never let it stop you. To feel inadequate, insecure in a world we know we will one day have to face alone is perhaps only natural. It would be difficult to tell him that none of these feelings ever truly go away. Instead, growing up is about learning how to deal with these feelings in a healthy way, to go on living despite them. But honestly, I think it was important I came to these realizations on my own, that I went through what I did, the good and the bad. But I do wish I could tell him one thing, that it's alright to be a child, to feel young, to take things slow, and just be okay with who you are in the moment, not who you're going to be. That anywhere can be paradise, as long as you have the will to live. After all, you are alive, so you will always have the chance to be happy. As long as the sun, the moon, and the earth exist, everything will be alright.
Даже те, кто не верит в приметы, уничтожат его кометы.